2007, we had some grant funds made available to us to help promote the Fox Movie Time News collection and to improve our future access options. And so we commissioned from a documentary filmmaker turned mad genius, a guy named Jeff Prinos, who lives in Alabama. He designed this film scanner for us. It's called the Meta-Archival Film Scanner. This is a research and development model. It's the first research and development model that he put together for motion picture film. You can tell it looks a little rough around the edges. He now sells a variant of this all over the world. But unlike the telecine, this is actually imaging right now at 2,000 lines of resolution. We could go up to 4,000 lines. At 4,000 or 4K, we'd be almost 3 times high definition television. We'd have to dumb it down to provide to HD content. And in this case, we're running some WIS film footage from 1961 through it. The thing that distinguishes this type of machine from the standard definition telecines, it doesn't produce video in the traditional sense. If you dim the lights behind you, just kind of a little dimmer there, kill it, you can kind of see this pulsing, right?
Yeah.
And so it's operating a lot like a projector in reverse or camera, in the sense that this lamp house is actually flashing. It's not a steady lamp, so it's flashing, and it's flashing every time it detects a frame of motion picture film running across the gate area. And when it detects a frame, this sensor or a camera in the back snaps a picture of that one frame.
What kind of light will blink at that rate?
These are industrial LEDs. And there's a lot of sophisticated, weird machine imaging programming that's been done that Jeff had to learn how to do to get it to do this. But it can detect through a couple means. We have a free-spinning sprockets, just like you might find on a projector, that would just count the number of perforations. So if it was 34, it would count 4 perforations, and then say that's a frame. Count 4 perforations, that's a frame. Right now, we have that sprocket disengaged, and we're using a special sensor for reversal stock that's actually using kind of almost a type of light to detect whether or not a perforation is in the presence or absence of a specific sensitive area of the gate off to the side here. We actually 3 ways that we can detect
Is
the frame.
that programmed in the software?
Yes, this is all included in software.
No, I mean the frame, you said you have a specific sensor, and I'm wondering if it's the hardware or the software that recognizes that.
It's all of it, right?
All of it,
so
yeah.
you have to tell the sensor how to. I mean, the sensor itself and the trigger mechanism are wired to this free-hanging circuit board.
Okay, so you can basically crop.
No, I mean we can, but we would do that all in software. In this sense, this is just a dumb trigger. Yes, no, frame, yes, no. It doesn't care what the frame is shaped like. Yes, no, and it's really just a trigger that tells the camera to take a picture.
Gotcha.
Now we can use software to tell the sensor that we only want the sensor to actually capture the pixel areas within the sensor that are the equivalent to this frame, so we wouldn't have the overscan here or here, or here or here. But we like the overscan, right? So this goes to a little bit about your questions about digital preservation or media preservation. So one of the things that we do here is capture not what's inside the frame, which is incredibly important, but also try to document the things on the outside. So as anybody who's done any kind of filmmaking work knows that there's an awful lot of information outside the frame. Everything from this type of negative numbering content, which could tell you a little bit whether or not the film had been edited or cut, and if it had been cut, how much had been removed, right? If you only are inside the frame, you never know what that really is. And in this case, we know what that is, right? The other thing that unlike that telecine in there, which has a sound head, and because it can only run at 24 frames per second for sound film, we can always capture the film in real time. These film scanners operate at speeds all over the place because, when they're new, and this is a fairly older model now, we took delivery in 2009. I mean, this is actually inaccurate. We're not running at 46 frames per second. We're really running at about 6 or 7 frames per second. And sound speed is 24 frames per second. If we put a sound hit on here, like that, we wouldn't get sound.
What's the size of the sensor?
The actual size is a couple centimeters, and I don't have the dimensions off the top of my head. But this is a large format. You can see the sensor itself, the sensor body is pretty sizable. We have a smaller color sensor. This is a monochrome modal sensor. One of the things we have done here is with another federal grant, as we've designed a piece of software in conjunction with the math department on campus. that if we overscan, in this case this is Fritz Hollings, you know, if we've used this machine to capture everything, and we've got an optical soundtrack, which is just a visual impression of the sound wave anyways, right? Well, the math department, the folks at the technically the interdisciplinary mathematics institute, were able to help us kind of put together a program. They designed an algorithm that could look at that and then extract the audio from the data as it kind of interpolated the data in software. So, you know, this is something we're now distributing to the world for free in beta software version, and it's getting a lot of good feedback and press. And you can see now we have a scanner. We can overscan. We're getting scanned at 4 frames per second. You know, 10 frames per second. It doesn't matter because we're capturing every frame. And then the software will go in and pull out the audio for us and marry it back to a
So
properly synchronized
what
video.
is the size of the file, say for 100 feet of film?
Wow, for 100 feet.
Or 1 foot, you know, whatever you know.
Well, I mean,
What's the range?
Well, let's put it this way. This one of these frames, right, that we've captured at about 2K, that would weigh in at about 30 megabytes per frame.
It's like 15.
15, yeah, it depends. And it depends. If it's color, it's more because you have
Oh,
more
yeah.
channels of information. So, you know, a color 4K TIFF, when we've captured that, runs in, weighs in at about 75 megabytes per frame, right? 16 frames per foot. So if your gold standard that you were looking at in terms of digital preservation for Fox or other 35 millimeter negative content, and you said I want every frame saved as a frame, which it really at some level is wonderful because it's long-term the safest way to keep it because it's very easy to read one still image.
And we also want to capture all of the information around the image.
Sure, yeah.
Which Greg may have said, and I was not paying attention.
So what's actually
But then
transporting?
it becomes incredibly hard to manage, you know, 60,000 frames of content, right? Because you have 60,000 files that represent just one reel of film. Just one reel of film is 60,000 digital files that have to be managed, kept together, checked for data, check some accuracy. So there's some trade-offs, right? We can keep it as video, which is what we tend to do, but then you live in codec world, right? Like we'll be able to look at that video in 30 years and have somebody that can play it.
Brittany, were you
For
going to
some,
say something?
yeah, it's just about a 20-second video would be 8 gigs worth of DPX files. And that's just.
And this, I should say, is Brittany Braddock, our scanning technician.
Yeah.
She works miracles with this equipment.
Yeah, so I mean, I was just looking at some DPX files we have, and it's about 20 seconds worth of video if you put it all together, and that's 8 gigs worth of space. So.
And what
It
kind
builds
of
up.
material, what's the original material?
It
Well,
varies,
depends.
right?
So in this
Yeah,
case,
I
it's
mean-
16 millimeter reversal. Positive, right?
Color? No,
In this case, it's black and white. He's got black and white on the scanner right now, but we do have 16 millimeter reversal color
Sound.
for sure.
Yeah.
It can have optical sound. It can have mag sound. We have in the Fox collection a significant quantity of 35 millimeter camera original.
So how does
Negative.
20 seconds generate, what'd you say, 8 gigabytes?
About 8 gigabytes worth of DPX files.
Oh.
Which are a version of a frame file, right?
Oh.
So it's an industry standard frame file format, so that if you did studio effects and you were bringing things into computers and making Hollywood films, you'd live with DPX files. You'd come in, you'd build them in their computer, you'd do all sorts of weird
So
things.
we may
V is in Victor.
D,
X.
D, P,
VX.
P.
DPX.
DPX. And I may have interrupted you. Were you asking what that specific source material was? And you might have
That was actually black and white, negative 35 millimeter film.
mentioned. Okay.
Oh, I'm
And scanned at
not
what
familiar
resolution?
with that.
2K.
So that's even smaller than we would like to create true digital surrogates of the Fox collection. We would consider 4K to be the standard there.
Wow.
So, to speak to your question earlier about the problem of digital preservation, it's a difficult problem. Storage space is getting cheaper all the time, but at the scales that we need, it's still not cheap. I went to an Open Repositories conference a couple weeks ago, and I learned that if we were to start the 4K scanning operation that we would like to start here, and we were to start regularly scanning our Fox materials, we would generate in a year the same amount of data in terms of just storage footprint as the Large Hadron Collider. So film preservation is on the scale of big science without, you know, any question. That takes resources, and you will note that we do not have that 4K scanner in here scanning every day yet. We're fundraising for it. So the best solution in terms of, the most cost-effective solution, at least in terms of keeping those very big files, is probably an LTO tape library, and we're exploring that option as well, although we do not have one of those either. At this time, our digital video repository is run from spinning disk servers. We use software called Gluster. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Guess you haven't talked about a partnership with Google.
No. No. But it's, I mean, it's a significant problem. So it's very expensive to do analog duplication. For each film, I have to come up with that $5 a foot. So there's a significant barrier at the item level. With digital, there's a significant barrier in startup costs. It's not inexpensive to buy a scanner. It's not inexpensive to invest in a tape library, and then those things have to be maintained.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, adding one more film at the margin, once you have invested in the infrastructure, is less expensive. And at any rate, we're running out of choices since analog labs and analog materials are slowly, but it seems surely disappearing. So.
Yeah.
Questions, comments? We have 2 minutes, I think, before we close.
It's really amazing, I think. It's all.
Oh, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
Oh, yes, I do have a question about archives of local news stuff within the last, say, 20 years. Does anybody have that, or is it
And do you
all
mean
separate?
specifically for South Carolina?
Just this, yeah, just the television news operations.
The television news operations, IS, BTW, LTX, all probably maintain. We know WIS maintains their tape library back to '75. I assume LTX and BTW maintain some type of tape library that goes back, but then they probably all abandoned tape within the last 10 years. So in terms of how they've been managing the content over the last decade, especially over the last 5 years, but they certainly stopped probably shooting tape. It's not clear to me, but they have to have some type of asset management system to log their film into it and to maintain it and keep it, even if it was born digital. So,
Yeah, interesting. So when do you think the actual tape was transplanted by Strictly Digital?
in WIS's history, we know that the